we saw on January 6th, right, that was a shame. It was a stain on the history of our country. I was angry when I saw this. I mean, I think it made me ashamed as an American. But as I saw what happened, the right answer to stop that violence is not less speech. It is actually more speech.
Very special.
Free speech is the question of how do we trade off some of the difficulties that come from people saying things that we don't want to hear, and how do we balance that against what it really means to get to truth, what it really means to get to the essence of what truth is in our society. And the question is, do you get there with less speech or do you get there with more speech? And so that was the beginning of the discussion we had with Floyd. It feels like an eternity ago. We had Floyd Abrams over at our apartment, and to have one of the top First Amendment litigators in conversation with me at home was not only an honor to me personally, it was a classic example of what Shabtai is all about, is to bring the best and brightest all together and for the rest of us to be able to participate in it. So it was an honor, and I was glad we were able to do it. At the very beginning, given your scholarship on the First Amendment, I thought it would be useful to anchor us at least in what you see, as you described in your recent book, as the soul of the First Amendment.
Sure, thank you. My book is more of a, for laymen, which focuses more on the differences between the level of First Amendment protection we have here and what occurs elsewhere in the democratic world. Most of that was really, I didn't mean it, there was no avoiding it, I guess, but I didn't mean it to be advocacy, at least in a direct way, of the American position. But I did mean it to contrast in a wide range of areas.
We ended up talking a lot about the role that corporations play with Citizens United.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts, in a decision that might actually have more dire implications than Dred Scott v. Sanford, declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
Now, Floyd was actually one of the lead lawyers in the case, in the Supreme Court case of Citizens United, where he argued that actually corporations ought to be able to make campaign contributions, ought to be able to participate in the marketplace of ideas.
By a 5-4 vote, the court overturned more than a century of law.
What the Supreme Court did in Citizens United is say to these same billionaires, you own and control the economy, you own Wall Street, you own the coal companies, you own the oil companies. Now, for a very small percentage of your wealth, we're going to give you the opportunity to own the United States government. That is the essence of what Citizens United is all about.
This ruling opens the floodgates for an unlimited amount of special interest money into our democracy.
Do I love a world in which politicians are responsive to the dollars of companies? No, I don't. But do I think that that is actually a cost of ultimately a free marketplace of ideas in America? I do. And that's where Floyd and I began to really agree.
We protect hate speech in a way that would be unthinkable in Canada. Our case involving the Westboro Baptist Church, which, as you may know, goes and sort of stands wherever the police will let them, as close to the churches in which American dead soldiers are being mourned, and have placards up denouncing the soldiers.
When you have a public funeral and you broadcast to the nation that that dead soldier is a hero and that God is blessing America, we will be there and tell you God is cursing America. And
the father of one of the deceased soldiers brought an action in court saying that this was what the law calls intentional infliction of emotional damage.
It is something no family should have to live through.
And the Supreme Court, in the opinion of the Chief Justice, wrote a rousing First Amendment opinion, saying in so many words, speech like this gets special protection because it's about a public issue. While the speech may be First Amendment protected, and I'm glad it is, it's very painful.
And the question is, what kind of society do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a society where we might have a sanitized sphere of dialogue? That may be a good thing in certain respects, at the cost of somebody else setting the debate of what can and can't be said. Or do we want to live in a world where the answer to hate speech and the answer to misinformation isn't less speech, but more speech?
Those people who always cite former Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, which is that more speech is the antidote for bad speech, it's a great anecdote, it's a great phrase, but it's just demonstrably not true.
Whose street? Our street!
The very best evidence that that's not true is Nazis. The Nazis were clearly defeated in World War II. Everything about them were defeated, especially the ideas of National Socialism. Yet they almost reemerged immediately. We're still having conversations about neo-Nazis and Nazism and National Socialism. How is that possible? Ideas linger, and the reason they linger is because we falsely enable them, we privilege them with the word ideas when they're not ideas. They're just unadulterated, unabashed hate. The idea of representative democracy is to encourage people to venture out into the village green, to the public square, and to either speak on a soapbox or listen to what's being said. But if the village green, if the public square is designed to send a message to African Americans or Jews or Muslims that they're not welcome and that their lives are in danger, that is not American, and that is not what the Founding Fathers believed.
At the end of the day, free speech hurts. It hurts because people are going to say things that hurt us, that ultimately challenge the way we think, and in some ways maybe just downright insulting to our own way of being. But do I think that that is actually a cost of ultimately a free marketplace of ideas in America? I do. The way I look at it is there's two possibilities. When you're challenged with a view that's different from your own, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to change your mind, and if you change your mind, that's a good thing. And if you don't change your mind, you're going to come out of that experience of being challenged with an even greater sense of conviction in why you believe what you do. And that's even better, to understand not only what you believe, but why you believe it.
We don't say to a person who's been hit over the head by a baseball bat, you know what, this is a free society, and if a person wants to take a baseball bat to your head, you just got to be able to accept it and let it slide off your back. Speech that's intended to cause intimidation, fear, depriving people of their sense of dignity, causes harm, causes inflammation. The neuroscience is unquestionable that speech does in fact wound. People who've been exposed to prolonged, unendurable intimidation, threat, indignity, they will tell you, you know what, give me the baseball bat instead. I'll take the baseball bat.
Look, a lot of things that used to be said in the privacy of a telephone are now routinely said online. It is a new world that we live in from a First Amendment policy perspective. It's a fantastic new development that the public in general, for almost no money at all, can have access to more views, participate more easily in ongoing discussions and the like in a way that was absolutely impossible just a few years ago. But the other side of that is that people who do some very bad things for the first time in our history are able to find other people who share their views and are prepared to go down those very dangerous and society-harming roads. I mean, there are now places for Nazis to talk. There are now places for potential terrorists to talk. I think that the cliche of calling it the Wild West on the internet significantly understates both the darker side of the impact and the near impossibility of doing much about that.
Well, Floyd Abrams is a longtime friend of mine, and he is clearly an icon of the First Amendment. When I hear this, I think he's saying that we should surrender to that. We're helpless. because the internet is another soapbox, and a much better soapbox, that empowers everyone to be speech makers and to be able to converse in a way that they weren't able to before, instead of saying, this is madness. In the law, we have what's called the reasonable person test. It's an objective standard. It essentially says, what would most people in a given time, in a given place, in a given situation think about that? How would they regard that? That's what the reasonable person test is. So much of our legal system is based on the reasonable person test. Why don't we apply the reasonable person test to signage and words and say, what would most people of this time, place, and of that status, a person who is an African American or a Jew or Hispanic, how might they regard that? I think most people, again, in good faith would say, you know what, that's not really an idea. That's really harm.
If we're going to live in a country with 330 million people and growing, we're going to live in a country where not everyone is able to see the promise of the principles at the same time. The thing that defines us as Americans is that we each have an independent perspective and yet are still willing to live in a common space, in a common nation, with somebody else who has independent perspectives that may be different than ours. And that's convenient to say. We all agree with that when it's a matter of perspectives that mostly align with ours. But when it's really put to the test is when we're put side by side with neighbors, with classmates, with colleagues at work whose perspectives aren't the same as ours. And each side is now so tethered to the short-term importance of what their alternative political goals are that they have sacrificed the very rules of the road, that once you have created a new monster, you cannot put that monster back in the cage. And part of the worldview of how the world ought to work in the modern woke left is that actually it ought to work with less speech. Actually, we have to achieve racial justice. Actually, we have to achieve gender injustice. Actually, we have to achieve environmental justice. We have to address the invisible power structures that have for centuries plagued the United States and much of the Western world. Okay, you could say whether or not you agree with those points of view. I am firmly committed to the idea that somebody ought to be able to say the most heinous political things that they possibly could say. People don't have to choose between the American dream and the First Amendment, between free speech and putting food on the dinner table. You get to have both. That is part of what America is all about.
We can't run away from doing the right thing simply because some people will misuse it. That's not to me, that's not a morally sustainable strategy. To say just because some people will claim that they have been the recipient of hate speech and that we shouldn't respect the power of protecting against hate speech because too many people will claim it. To me, that is not, again, it's not a morally sustainable position or a legitimate legal position. If we believe that hate speech is harmful and that it's not delivered in the spirit of informing the electorate and contributing to the marketplace of ideas, then we have to be able to accept that sometimes people will make that same argument with ill motive or illegitimate reasons and claim that they've been exposed to hate speech when they haven't. And that's what we have juries for.
I think our culture of censorship and free speech played a big role in creating a group of people who felt like violence needed to be their outlet. And instead, what we need to do is to be able to let those people back on social media, let those people back in the public square, to allow their ideas to be heard so that we can hear loud and clear why those ideas are wrong. And I think that is what we'll hear when at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, if the best arguments can't defeat the other side, then we shouldn't use force to do it either, because the reply in return is going to be force of a different kind. That's our race to the bottom. Democracy is a place in which we settle our most important political disputes through reason and debate, not through the use of force.
What I'm suggesting is a new civics lesson as a reminder of what it is the Bill of Rights was intended to achieve. It might be that this is the antidote to the polarization that we have, right? Because we've only seemed to be communicating toward each other in the extreme, right? But we're not really trying to define a set of real rules about how people should engage in public discussion, public discourse. Today, we've basically said that if you disagree with me at all, you're morally beyond the pale. You know, you almost never hear anyone say, you know, I never considered it that way before. You know, you've given me something to think about. Let me take a few days. I might come back with some response, but thank you for that. Nobody talks like that anymore. But that's really what this essence of liberalism is. To be a liberal means to be open.